I never thought I'd unravel my life by glancing at her phone, but there it was. A text from a man named Edgar, dripping with secret desire. One moment, I was her devoted husband. Next, I was a man betrayed. Now every photo and memory feels like a cruel joke mocking my trust. My son's safety is on the line, and I'll tear through any facade to protect him. Late nights, hidden rendezvous, and shattered promises paint her double life in stark colors. They never expected me to fight back, but I won't be the one crying when this ends. Chapter 1. Mitchell Mercer woke before sunrise, stirred by an old habit he'd never fully discarded. While he hadn't worn a uniform in years, the ingrained discipline of early mornings persisted. He sat up on the edge of the bed, rolling his shoulders to alleviate a dull ache earned from a decade of service. Freya, his wife of 13 years, was still curled under the comforter, assuming she was even home. Lately, her comings and goings blurred. Sometimes she slipped in during the early hours, reeking faintly of perfume he didn't recognize. Sometimes she was gone altogether when morning came. He quietly padded out of the bedroom, mindful not to wake their 10-year-old son, Darius, who was a heavy sleeper but deserved peace. In the kitchen, Mitchell brewed a pot of coffee. The aroma filled the silence, but he found no comfort in it. He was grappling with suspicions he wished weren't there. The last thing he wanted was to suspect his own wife of duplicity. Sipping from his favorite ceramic mug, a chipped memento from his ranger days, he tried focusing on the day's tasks. A big project awaited him at the construction site, where he oversaw safety protocols. Yet his mind wandered back to the puzzling changes in Freya's behavior. Late nights, hidden texts, excuses that never added up. He drummed his fingers on the countertop, telling himself to remain calm. He had been taught to rely on facts, not assumptions. He wasn't some timid husband blind to reality. He was a man who understood the necessity of observation and careful moves. That calm, analytical mindset had saved him more than once in his past. If he was going to unearth whatever was brewing under his own roof, he needed to handle it with precision. Freya emerged in the kitchen about an hour after sunrise, wearing a gray pantsuit that flattered her figure a bit too strategically for a supposed day at the office. She forced a smile when she saw Mitchell, though her eyes flickered with a tension she tried hard to conceal. "Hey," she said briskly. "I have an early meeting. Might be out late. Something about new clients." Mitchell nodded, scanning her expression. "Right. You need coffee?" She hesitated. "No time," she said, grabbing a small bottle of juice from the fridge. "I'll probably just get something at Starbucks on the way." Mitchell observed her. Gone was the old warmth in her tone, replaced by clipped efficiency. She avoided his gaze, focusing instead on her phone. A string of vibrations ticked across the device, presumably notifications. She turned to him with a quick farewell, then hurried out the door. Left alone, Mitchell exhaled slowly. He remembered a time not too long ago when Freya would linger at the kitchen table, discussing the day's plans, sharing jokes about their co-workers. Now, every conversation felt like an exchange of pleasantries that concealed something darker. He wasn't naive. His gut told him she was hiding a secret. The first seeds of betrayal had been planted in his mind weeks ago, when she accidentally left her phone unlocked. He'd glanced over innocently and spotted a text from someone named E. She snatched it away before he could read more, her face pale with alarm. Since then, he'd been stuck in a silent swirl of doubt, but Mitchell refused to be a victim. If Freya was betraying him, he would not let it lie. He would figure out the truth, protect Darius, and handle things on his own terms. Around mid-morning, Mitchell went about his regular routine at the construction site. His position as a safety inspector had once been a humble start, but he quickly proved invaluable with his discipline and knowledge. A few crew members looked up to him as both a mentor and an enforcer. If someone slacked off with their gear, Mitchell fixed the problem swiftly. He barked out instructions to a new hire who'd forgotten a hard hat. "You want to keep your skull in one piece?" he asked, voice stern. "Then follow the rules. They exist for a reason." Normally, he'd find some measure of satisfaction in this role, in the routine of ensuring everything ran smoothly. Today, though, his patience was thin. He had bigger concerns. During lunch break, he sat alone at a metal table, phone in hand. He hovered over Ingrid's contact name. Ingrid was an old friend from his service days who now worked in courthouse records. If anyone had the resources to run discreet checks or gather intel, it was her. He typed out a message. "Ingrid might need a favor. Sensitive. Let me know when you have time to talk." Hitting send felt like crossing a line. He was effectively preparing for an investigation into his own wife's life. But something inside him urged that it was necessary. He refused to let confusion or a misplaced sense of loyalty hamper him. By the time he returned home that evening, the house was eerily quiet. Darius was in his bedroom, headphones on, playing a video game. Mitchell knocked gently and stepped inside, noticing his son's posture was slumped. "Hey, buddy," Mitchell said, forcing a smile. "How was school?" Darius paused his game. "It was okay. Mom said she wouldn't be back till late, so I heated leftovers." Mitchell's jaw tightened. Freya had apparently not mentioned her whereabouts to their child either, more evidence that she was leading a double life. He ruffled Darius's hair softly. "All right. Thanks for taking care of dinner yourself," Mitchell said. "I'll cook us something fresh if you're still hungry." "Sure, Dad," Darius answered quietly, but there was a hint of sadness in his voice. Mitchell recognized it as the kind of sadness that creeps in when a child feels the absence of a parent. When Mitchell left the room, he silently vowed, if Freya's new lifestyle was hurting Darius, then she'd crossed a line, and crossing lines meant consequences. That night, Mitchell found himself alone in the living room at nearly midnight. The TV was off. He wasn't interested in mindless programs. Freya still hadn't come home. A small lamp in the corner cast warm light over a photo of them taken years earlier. She was laughing. He was wearing a broad grin, and Darius, just a toddler then, was perched on his shoulders. A memory of happier times, or perhaps a naive snapshot before the cracks began to show. In the silence, his phone buzzed. Ingrid's name appeared on the screen. Mitchell answered it promptly, stepping outside onto the front porch. "Mitchell," Ingrid said in a lowered tone, "I got your text. Everything all right?" He blew out a breath. "Not really. I need information. Specifically, I need to find out about a guy named E who's been texting my wife. He might be some kind of business contact, but I suspect it's more personal." "Understood," Ingrid replied. "Send me what you have. If you can get a partial phone number or address or anything, let me know. I'll dig in." Mitchell thanked her. He ended the call feeling a mix of gratitude and grim resolve. He was stepping onto a battlefield, not in a desert or a jungle, but in his own home. The stakes felt even higher because this was about family, about loyalty, about the foundation of trust that was supposed to hold a marriage together. 2 days later, Ingrid got back to him with a small lead. "There's a man named Edgar. At least that's the best match I can find with partial digits from Freya's phone records, public ones. The rest are behind security. He's been staying at upscale hotels quite often. Short stays. Lots of transactions in places known for nightlife. It's not conclusive, but it's suspicious." Mitchell sank into the chair behind his desk, heart pounding in his chest. Edgar. So, a name to match the suspicion. Ingrid's tone was apologetic. as if she hated being the bearer of bad news. "I'll keep digging," she promised. "I also can run a background check if you want." "Do it," Mitchell said evenly. "I need everything." He ended the call and rubbed his temples. So, there it was confirmation that Freya might be linked to someone else, someone with a questionable lifestyle. He stared at the silent walls of the home office. This was no longer a vague fear. It was a reality. In the past, Mitchell had handled betrayal on missions, trusting colleagues only to have them double-cross him. He'd adapted, removed threats systematically, and moved on. But that was war. This was marriage. It cut deeper. Freya waltzed in that night at nearly 1 a.m. Mitchell stood in the living room, arms crossed, as she quietly closed the door behind her. She froze when she realized he was awake, the tension in her body so sharp he could almost see it shimmering. "Working late?" Mitchell asked, voice calm but with a steely undercurrent. She hesitated, fiddling with the strap of her purse. "We had a big client dinner. I told you I might be late." Mitchell eyed her. "No, you didn't." Her lips parted, but she gave no clear response. Silence thickened, each second heavier than the last. Finally, she forced an awkward laugh. "I must have forgot to text you. Sorry." She brushed past him, heading toward the bedroom. "I'm exhausted." He let her go without another word, because he wasn't ready for a confrontation that lacked proof. Accusing her blindly wasn't his style. He needed facts to pin her down. And from what Ingrid had begun uncovering, those facts would soon be in his hands. A week passed, and Mitchell played the role of an unsuspecting husband, though inside, every nerve was alive with vigilance. He quietly installed a small security camera in the garage somewhere Freya never ventured except to hop into her car and set it to record movements. He also noted that every evening she left, she'd do so with excuses that grew progressively flimsier. Darius sensed something was off. "Dad," he said one afternoon, approaching Mitchell on the back porch while Mitchell polished an old pocket knife. "Mom's never around. Did something happen?" Mitchell looked at his son's worried face. "I don't know yet, buddy," he admitted, keeping his voice gentle. "But I promise, I'll handle it. You just focus on being a kid, okay?" Darius nodded slowly, eyes clouded with confusion. In that moment, Mitchell's resolve hardened. Any betrayal that threatened Darius's emotional well-being was an ultimate line not to be crossed. Late one Saturday, Mitchell heard the distant sound of the garage door opening and then closing. Freya had left with the excuse of shopping, but the trunk was empty when he checked. She'd come home with no bags, no purchases. The routine was becoming too obvious. Ingrid called again, her voice urgent. "Mitchell, there's more. This Edgar guy has prior domestic disputes with a previous girlfriend that ended in a restraining order. Nothing that led to a conviction, but it's on record. He might have a violent streak." Mitchell clenched his jaw. "Does Freya know?" "Hard to say," Ingrid replied. "But you need to be cautious. If she's tangled up with him, who knows what else is going on?" Mitchell thanked her, then hung up. He stared at the phone for a moment, his mind buzzing with half-formed scenarios. Could Freya be manipulated by a dangerous man, or was she a willing participant? He refused to paint her as an innocent victim without cause. She was too smart to fall blindly for a con, unless there was something in it for her. He pulled in a deep breath. This wouldn't end with some mild marital squabble. The cracks ran deeper, and he felt a storm brewing that threatened to upend the entire life he'd built. The tipping point came when Mitchell discovered a series of suspicious bank transfers from their joint account to a newly opened personal one under Freya's name. He found them by accident while reviewing monthly statements. On the surface, they were small enough to avoid detection 200 here, 300 there. But over the course of the last few months, They added up to thousands. And then, the final blow. An email left open on their shared laptop. Freya had apparently forgotten to log out. It contained a half-typed message to Edgar referencing a plan to sell or mortgage the house. Something about using the equity. The message wasn't finished, but it was enough for Mitchell to see that she was orchestrating something significant behind his back. He closed the laptop, fighting the urge to rage. Instead, he wrote down every relevant detail, photographing the email with his phone. Evidence. He needed to think strategically. She was messing with finances, and Edgar had a history of intimidation. Was there a plot to force Mitchell out of his own home? Exploit him financially? The possibility seethed in him. That night, Freya came home earlier than usual, smiling sweetly as if nothing were amiss. Mitchell responded with measured politeness, feigning ignorance. The moment she retreated to the bedroom, he stared at the empty living room wall, mind swirling with both heartbreak and cold determination. She was not just cheating, she was setting him up for a potential financial ruin. "Okay," he murmured under his breath, his voice tight. "If that's how you want to play, I'll play. But I promise, you won't see me coming." Chapter 2. Freya's big mistake was underestimating Mitchell's capacity for methodical planning. A couple of weeks after discovering those questionable emails and bank statements, Mitchell secretly reached out to Selena, an old acquaintance who worked as a paralegal in a high-end law firm. She had once told Mitchell that if he ever needed legal guidance, she owed him a favor. Now, he was cashing in. On a dreary Monday morning, Mitchell met Selena at a small cafe in the next town over, ensuring no chance of running into Freya or her associates. The place was quiet. Only two older men nursed black coffee in a corner booth. Selena, a petite woman with an analytical glint in her eye, studied the documents Mitchell had brought. "This is quite a pile," she remarked, flipping through screenshots, bank statements, and a scribbled timeline of Freya's movements. Freya might be preparing for a separation on her terms, draining the finances, or stacking the deck so you come out with nothing. Mitchell nodded grimly. "I can't let that happen, especially not at the cost of our son's stability." Selena looked up, her gaze firm. "Understood. I'll do what I can to verify the authenticity of these documents and keep it discreet. If she's forging or misrepresenting anything, we can use that later. Meanwhile, watch your joint accounts closely." He left the cafe feeling marginally better. At least he now had some form of legal insight. Freya might be cunning, but she clearly didn't realize Mitchell was 2 steps behind her, quietly collecting the rope she'd eventually hang herself with. As days passed, Mitchell also deepened his alliance with Ingrid. She had managed to trace more of Edgar's background, multiple addresses in different states, involvement in a shady real estate ring, and rumored connections to loan sharks. He seemed like a predator who thrived on exploiting people's vulnerabilities. One afternoon, Ingrid texted, "Edgar's on record for an assault charge that got dropped. The victim recanted, but it's suspicious." Mitchell read the text while on a break at the construction site. Assault, another piece of the puzzle. If Edgar was as violent as the records implied, Freya's involvement with him wasn't just reckless, it could be downright dangerous. Mitchell gritted his teeth, remembering Darius. His priority was to shield his son from any fallout. He imagined a scenario where Edgar manipulated Freya into scamming Mitchell for money or property or both. Worse, maybe Freya was the one manipulating Edgar. She wasn't exactly naive. Either way, Mitchell had no intention of waiting passively. Late one evening, Mitchell found Freya perched on the living room couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up at him with a guarded expression as though bracing for a confrontation. Mitchell wore his usual stoic mask. giving away nothing. "Long day?" Freya asked, forcing a conversational tone. "Yep," Mitchell responded, crossing the room to sit in an armchair across from her. He noticed she tapped her phone screen off the moment he walked in. She set the device aside. "I was thinking, maybe we should consider putting the house on the market in a few months. You know the economy is strong, property values up. It could be a good time." He arched a brow. So she was starting to introduce the idea out in the open now. "Is that right?" "Yes," Freya continued as if she'd planned her script. "We could downsize or find something more modern. We've lived here a while. Maybe we need a change." Mitchell studied her. "I like it here," he said simply. "And so does Darius. Let's not rush." Freya pursed her lips, disappointment flaring in her eyes. "Well, it's just a suggestion. We can talk about it later." She picked up her phone and sauntered out, leaving Mitchell to sit in the silent living room. He understood this was an opening gambit, a test to gauge his reaction. She was laying groundwork, either for a forced sale or some elaborate con. He exhaled, feeling anger simmer beneath his composure. "You want a war, Freya?" he thought silently. "You're about to get one." One pivotal weekend, Mitchell told Freya he was heading to a friend's ranch for a short getaway. In reality, he booked a motel 2 towns away, anticipating that she'd use his absence to meet Edgar. If she believed he was gone overnight, she'd feel safe to invite her secret lover home or slip away to meet him elsewhere. Sure enough, his discreet security cameras at the garage pinged him around midnight. Freya returned home with someone else. The resolution wasn't high enough to see his face clearly, but the silhouette matched what Ingrid had described of Edgar: tall, broad shoulders, a swaggering gait. Mitchell, sitting on the edge of a stale motel bed, watched the footage on his phone. Freya and the man disappeared into the house. Mitchell's jaw tightened until his teeth felt ready to crack. This raw proof of her adultery stung, but it also steeled his determination. Let them have their tryst, he thought. The more comfortable they got, the more likely they'd slip up and reveal something he could use later. The next morning, Mitchell returned home, making sure to arrive later than usual so Freya would think he was genuinely away all night. Darius was in the living room, finishing breakfast. "Hey, Dad," the boy greeted, setting down his cereal bowl. "Mom's gone out again. Said she needed groceries. She left like an hour ago." Mitchell nodded, ruffling Darius's hair. "All right, buddy. Did you sleep okay?" "Yeah, I guess." Darius frowned. "Mom had a friend over last night. I heard them talking." Mitchell's heart clenched. "Oh, yeah? Did you see who it was?" Darius shook his head. "No. She told me to stay in my room. She said it was grown-up business. I only heard a man's voice. He sounded kind of angry at one point. I don't know." Mitchell placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Don't worry, kiddo. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes adults talk about complicated stuff." Inwardly, Mitchell seethed. If Edgar was raising his voice under the same roof where Darius slept, then the situation was more volatile than he initially suspected. He vowed that he'd never allow the jerk to lay a finger on his son or intimidate him. Selena arranged a secret meeting at her firm on a Sunday when the office was mostly deserted. She guided Mitchell through a side entrance, ushering him into a small conference room. Stacks of paper and a laptop lay waiting. "I've cross-referenced your documents with public records," Selena said, her voice hushed but urgent. "Freya recently contacted a real estate lawyer. She's trying to shift ownership of your property into a trust that only she controls. She's listed some personal references, but I need to confirm if Edgar is behind them." Mitchell's expression darkened. "So she aims to freeze me out of the house?" Selena nodded. Potentially. If she finalizes the paperwork without your knowledge, you could be blindsided, forced into a sale, or worse. If you can prove fraud, though, the trust can be contested. Mitchell stared at the legal jargon in front of him, memories of dusty combat missions swirling in his mind. Paperwork wasn't his battlefield of choice, but a man uses the tools available. If Freya wanted to fight a war of documents, he'd arm himself accordingly. "I need everything you can get me on the lawyer she's using," he told Selena. "And I need to secure evidence that she's forging or hiding details. We can't just rely on hearsay." Selena agreed. "I'll keep it quiet. In the meantime, watch your finances like a hawk and consider moving any personal funds to an account she can't touch." He inhaled slowly. "All right, let's do this." One quiet evening, Mitchell decided it was time for a direct conversation with Darius about the changes in their household. He found his son in his room, surrounded by school books and a half-eaten pizza on a paper plate. "Mind if I come in, champ?" Mitchell asked from the doorway. Darius looked up and nodded. Mitchell took a seat on the edge of the bed. The boy's eyes were tinged with worry, the same anxious look Mitchell had seen far too often lately. "Darius," Mitchell began gently, "I know things have been tense around here. Your mom's been out a lot, and you've probably got questions." The boy fiddled with the edge of his math textbook. "Yeah, I mean, it's just weird. She's always away or on the phone. And sometimes she hardly talks to me." Mitchell swallowed, pushing aside his own anger to focus on comforting his son. "I'm working on making things better. But I need you to know no matter what happens between me and your mom, you're my priority." Darius's expression wavered. "Are you and Mom gonna get divorced?" The directness of the question startled Mitchell. He let out a slow breath. "I hope not, but it's possible. There are problems we have to figure out." Darius looked down, his voice trembling slightly. "I just want us to be a family again." Mitchell's chest ached with empathy and anger at Freya for forcing such a burden onto a 10-year-old. He pulled Darius into a gentle hug. "No matter what, you and I are family. That won't change." The next day, Ingrid dropped a bombshell. Edgar had prior entanglements with a ring of con artists that targeted homeowners in financial distress, offering loans at outrageous interest rates and then snatching properties when the victims defaulted. She sent Mitchell a dossier via encrypted email. The more he read, the more his blood simmered. It began to piece together in a terrifying clarity. Freya was trying to shuffle ownership of the house, possibly so she and Edgar could leverage it for a loan scheme or sell it outright for quick cash. Her illusions of building a new life might be fueling all of this. Mitchell stared at the glowing screen in his dimly lit office. He recalled the day he and Freya first moved into this place, painting the walls together, joking about finally settling down after years of drifting. That memory felt distant, almost like it belonged to different people entirely. He clenched his fists. "You want to tear down everything we built?" he thought. "Think again. This house will not fall into your crooked hands." Desperate times called for cunning measures. That week, Mitchell discreetly moved his personal savings to a separate account under his name only. He also spoke with a trusted colleague at the construction company, ensuring he could do some remote work if needed. With betrayal swirling around him, he intended to become far less predictable in his comings and goings. He even began parking his truck a few blocks away sometimes, letting Freya assume he was absent, while he silently observed the house from a distance. Twice, he spotted Edgar's flashy SUV rolling into their driveway late at night. On the second occasion, Mitchell crept close enough to snap a few grainy photos. The camera lens captured the silhouette of Freya kissing Edgar at the threshold, Mitchell felt a wrenching disgust and heartbreak, but also a sharpening resolve. He refused to be an idle spectator in this twisted game. If you're brazen enough to flaunt your affair in my own home, he thought, then you better be ready for the consequences. One evening, things took a darker turn. Darius, having been dropped off by a friend's mother after basketball practice, walked into the living room to find Edgar sitting there, rummaging through a drawer like he owned the place. Freya was nowhere in sight. Darius froze, uncertain. He'd seen glimpses of Edgar before, but never had a direct encounter. The man turned around, a sneer curling his lips. "What are you looking at, kid?" I live here," Darius stammered, intimidated by Edgar's towering frame. Edgar rose to his full height, stepping toward Darius with a strange menace. "Your mom asked me to pick up something," he lied. "You got a problem with that?" Terrified, Darius shook his head quickly. Edgar brushed past him and left, slamming the door behind him. The incident lasted less than a minute, but Darius was trembling by the time Mitchell returned from work. When Mitchell heard what happened, a cold fury glimmered behind his eyes. His son had been frightened in his own house by Freya's supposed lover. That was the final straw. No more games, Mitchell decided. He would secure evidence to bury them both, if necessary. Chapter 3. It was nearly midnight when Mitchell sat at the dining table, documents spread out in front of him. A digital recorder lay beside his laptop. Ingrid had supplied him with phone call logs that suggested Freya was in deeper than he'd imagined. She'd placed multiple calls to a suspicious lending agency that Ingrid suspected Edgar used as a front for predatory loans. Mitchell played a snippet of audio Ingrid had intercepted through a contact at the phone company, nothing strictly legal, but enough to confirm the nature of Freya's plans. In the recording, Freya's voice trembled with anxious excitement. "I'm finalizing the house paperwork soon. We'll have the equity. Edgar assured me everything is set." Mitchell paused the audio, anger curling in his chest. She was practically handing Edgar the keys to ruin them. His fists clenched. He was done being a quiet observer. It was time to escalate his counterattack. He set up a hidden microphone in the living room, carefully placing it behind a decorative vase. The device transmitted data to a small recorder in his locked office. He had no illusions that covert recordings might be inadmissible in a standard court hearing, but this was about leverage. The following weekend, Mitchell arranged for Darius to stay with a trusted friend, Calvin, who had been in the Army with him. He told Darius it was just for a fun sleepover, but in truth, Mitchell wanted the house empty. He sensed something big was about to happen. Sure enough, Freya announced she was hosting a couple of colleagues for dinner. She suggested Mitchell make himself scarce, but Mitchell pretended he had a headache and was going to bed early. Instead, he lurked quietly in his office, monitoring the live audio feed from the living room. When Edgar arrived, Mitchell recognized the man's voice. A second male voice joined them, someone named Trevor, apparently part of the loan scheme. They spoke in hushed tones, though the mic picked up snatches. Freya: "The equity is around 200,000 if we sell quickly." Edgar: "We get the paperwork done. Then Mitchell's out of the picture. He won't see a dime." Trevor: "Once you sign the documents, we'll expedite the loan process. Quick turnaround." Mitchell clenched his jaw, heart pounding. They were finalizing a plan to sever him from his own property. He forced himself to keep listening, ignoring the hot rage that flooded him. Trevor soon departed, leaving Freya and Edgar alone. Mitchell heard the clink of glasses, probably celebratory champagne or wine. "Have you told your husband anything?" Edgar asked, voice dripping with contempt. Freya scoffed. "God, no. He's clueless. He's a nice enough guy, but so dull. He'll never see this coming until it's done." Mitchell's chest tightened. He stared at the audio feed, every word slicing through him like a blade. So that was what she truly thought of him? Some dull, naive husband? Edgar laughed. As soon as the sale goes through, we pay off the shady creditors using that bridging loan. Then you, me, and that leftover cash can start fresh somewhere else. Freya purred in agreement. I just want out of this marriage. I've been stuck in it for too long. Mitchell's so stiff, and that kid of his... Mitchell's vision blurred with anger. He yanked off the headphones, not wanting to hear another vile word against Darius. He had the confirmation he needed. They were conspiring to tear everything apart. Rather than storm into the living room and confront them directly, Mitchell exercised restraint. A rash confrontation might blow his chance to gather more decisive proof or to secure the house legally. Instead, he texted Selena. They're finalizing details to sell the house behind my back. We need an injunction or something that can freeze the title. She responded swiftly, even at that late hour. I'll file an emergency motion first thing Monday. Gather all your evidence. Mitchell stared at the phone screen. Evidence was piling up. Audio recordings, suspicious documents, email records. He just needed to keep Freya and Edgar from launching a preemptive strike. In his mind, the next step was clear. Fully sabotage their finances so they couldn't easily manipulate any additional bank transactions. Ingrid had a contact in the IRS who might randomly flag Edgar's shady business for an audit, freezing his accounts. As for Freya, if she tried to finalize the trust or sale, the legal system would greet her with an unexpected roadblock. Early Monday morning, Mitchell left for work, meticulously cheerful so Freya wouldn't suspect a thing. She barely acknowledged his goodbye, too busy texting on her phone. At the construction site, he made a few calls during his break. Ingrid promised to set the wheels in motion for Edgar's financial troubles. Selena was preparing the legal freeze. Calvin called to say Darius was doing fine, oblivious to the adult turmoil. That was a relief. And just like that, the counteroffensive began. A series of events would unfold over the coming days. Edgar would discover his accounts under scrutiny. Freya would find every path to selling the house or transferring funds mysteriously blocked by legal red tape. Mitchell, the dull, clueless husband, was about to show them both how easily their scheme could unravel. But adversity has a way of lashing back. A few days later, Mitchell came home to find Freya seated at the kitchen table, tears streaking her face. Initially, he thought it was another performance, but the anger in her eyes seemed genuine. She pushed a letter across the table. "What the hell is this?" she demanded. Mitchell picked it up. It was an official notice from the county clerk's office, something about an immediate hold placed on property transfers pending investigation. He feigned confusion, reading it carefully. "I'm not sure. Maybe it's some bureaucratic mix-up?" Freya's eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me. You must have done something. Why would the county suspect fraud? Now I can't finalize the refinance or anything else until this is cleared." Mitchell shrugged, calmly setting the letter down. "I have no idea. Maybe the county is cracking down on suspicious property moves. It's not my fault if your paperwork got flagged." She rose to her feet, fists clenched at her sides. "You're not as stupid as I thought. If I find out you orchestrated this, you'll regret it." Her threat hung in the air, and Mitchell felt a flicker of real danger. Freya was cornered, and cornered animals sometimes strike viciously. Just when Mitchell thought the drama had peaked, Ingrid phoned him with urgent news. Edgar had been confronted by suspicious men outside a bar. Word on the street was that Edgar owed them money, probably part of some loan arrangement. If Edgar didn't cough up funds soon, they'd come after him. Ingrid's tone was grim. "Mitchell, if Edgar is pressured by these goons, he might escalate. He could get violent or force Freya to do something drastic. Watch your back." Mitchell rubbed a hand over his jaw. Violence. The last thing he wanted was an open confrontation that might endanger Darius. But if Edgar truly was an unstable criminal, the risk was high that he'd do something reckless. He texted Calvin telling him to keep Darius for a bit longer. He didn't want his son anywhere near this firestorm until it was under control. Calvin agreed without hesitation. His precautions proved wise. 2 nights later, Mitchell arrived home late from the construction site to find the front door's glass panel shattered. His heart pounded as he inched inside, switching on a flashlight. Furniture was overturned, drawers pulled out. A chill ran down his spine when he spotted a trail of blood droplets near the couch. "Freya?" he called, though not sure if he wanted her to answer. The house remained silent. He scanned the living room, noticing the decorative vase that had hidden his microphone was smashed, so they'd found his little bug. Someone had rummaged for evidence or valuables. In the hallway, he found Freya's phone on the floor, screen cracked, dried blood smeared across it. He crouched down to pick it up, dread coiling in his gut. No sign of Freya herself, though. Just then, the headlights of a car lit up the window. Edgar burst in, a wild look in his eyes, a small pistol clutched in his right hand. He froze when he locked eyes with Mitchell. They stared at each other, tension humming in the air. Edgar's knuckles were battered and raw, possibly from punching something or someone. There was a smear of blood on his cheek. "You!" Edgar spat, voice shaking with rage. "Where is she?" Mitchell stayed calm, noticing Edgar's pistol waver slightly. "I have no idea. I just got here myself." Edgar's eyes darted around the trashed living room. "She called me, screaming for help, said men were pounding on the door." He gestured angrily with the gun. "Now the place is torn up and she's gone." Mitchell's mind raced. Men collecting a debt? Or had Freya tried to double-cross Edgar and ended up a victim of violence? "Look," he said, "if she's in trouble, we should call the cops." "Cops?" Edgar's bark of laughter was tinged with hysteria. "You think I want the cops here? They'll pin this on me." Mitchell inched sideways, hands up in a conciliatory gesture. "What do you want from me, then?" Edgar glared. "You did something to our deals, tied up the house, messed with the money. Now these psychos want their cut. And Freya's vanished. If she's not paying them, they'll come after me." Mitchell felt no sympathy. Edgar had chosen this path. But the immediate concern was diffusing the situation so nobody ended up dead. "Put the gun down, man," he said softly. "Let's think this through." Edgar shook his head, stepping closer. "You think you're so damn clever. I'm not leaving here without answers. Where's the money?" Chapter 4. The moment Edgar's trembling hand aimed that pistol at Mitchell, the air in the shattered living room turned razor sharp. 1,000 thoughts blitzed through Mitchell's mind. Darius's safety, Freya's disappearance, the blood on the phone, the savage glint in Edgar's eyes. Yet Mitchell willed himself to stand firm, shoulders squared, breath steady. He wasn't about to fold. He'd been in far worse situations back in his military days, cornered in dust-swept enclaves under enemy fire. This was his home turf, or what was left of it. Broken glass crunched underfoot as he took a cautious step forward. "Edgar," Mitchell said in a measured tone, "whatever you think happened, pointing a gun at me won't solve it." Edgar's upper lip curled, sweat beading on his forehead. "I told you," he spat, voice taut. "Freya called me. She was in trouble. Now she's gone. You sabotaged everything, you bastard. You froze the finances, you blocked the sale. And if she's been taken," Mitchell let out a low breath. "Taken by who? Some loan sharks you owe money to? Or did Freya run off with a new plan? Don't pin your chaos on me. You two were playing a con, trying to ruin me. Now it's backfiring." A flicker of doubt passed across Edgar's face. He tightened his grip on the pistol, but the muzzle dipped fractionally. I'm losing everything because of you. Those guys came to collect, found an empty house, tore it up looking for valuables or for Freya. Now she's vanished into thin air. I can't pay them a dime unless that house deal goes through. Mitchell raised a brow. If she's vanished, she might be running from you. Maybe she realized you were a lost cause. The implication stung Edgar enough to make him lunge forward. Mitchell's reflexes kicked in. In one fluid motion, he deflected Edgar's outstretched arm, forcing the gun sideways. A shot cracked, echoing off the walls. The bullet lodged in a cabinet, splintering wood. With two powerful moves, Mitchell disarmed Edgar, yanking the pistol free and tossing it aside. He twisted Edgar's wrist until the man hissed in pain. Don't test me, Mitchell warned icily. Hurting me won't fix your mistakes. Edgar's knees buckled. Mitchell let him collapse to the floor. In the silence, they both heard a faint wheeze from outside, maybe the wind, or perhaps the tail end of a car engine. Adrenaline roared in Mitchell's veins. He let go of Edgar's wrist, stepping back, keeping a watchful eye. Edgar cradled his bruised arm, glowering. So what now? He muttered through gritted teeth. Now, Mitchell said quietly, you tell me everything you know about Freya's involvement with these loan sharks, because if she's in danger, I'll handle it my way, and if you think you're going to keep messing with my life, you've got another thing coming. Edgar sat there panting, the indignity fueling his rage. She told me, he began, voice trembling, that once the house sold, we'd have $100,000 to pay off a bridging loan. The rest of the equity would fund our future. But these guys we borrowed from, they're not the type you see in business suits. They operate from the shadows. If they sense we can't pay them back, they'll do worse than break a few windows. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. And Freya contacted them personally? He gave a spiteful laugh. Hell no. She always used me as the middleman. Said her name couldn't appear on any contracts. She was too smart for that. Or so she thought. Where is she now? Edgar shrugged helplessly. I found her phone in the hallway, just like you did. She must have dropped it when the men arrived. They ransacked the place, maybe looking for valuables. I got here too late, found the front door broken, no sign of her. Mitchell glanced around the trashed living room. The scenario was plausible. The question was, had Freya been dragged off by these criminals? Or had she seized the chance to escape, leaving the phone behind to muddy the trail? She was cunning enough to vanish if it suited her purpose, but the blood on that phone disturbed him. Possibly, she was genuinely hurt. The flicker of concern warred with Mitchell's resentment. He reminded himself that Freya had knowingly aided in child abuse, financial betrayal, and emotional sabotage. Did she deserve a rescue? Maybe not. But Mitchell needed clarity. If these thugs threatened Darius in any way, that was a line of no return. Mitchell rummaged for his own phone, ignoring Edgar's icy stare. He called Ingrid first, his voice low. Ingrid, I need an immediate check on any unusual calls from Freya's line in the last few hours. She's missing. The house got trashed, and there's blood on her phone. Ingrid's alarm was palpable. That's serious. Are you safe? I'm fine. Edgar's here, and he's claiming some men came looking for money. They might have taken Freya, or she could have fled. I'll text you the phone's IMEI. Maybe we can track it if she has a secondary device. Also, any leads on known criminals in the area who handle bridging loans. I want names, addresses. Got it, Ingrid said briskly. Be careful. Ending the call, Mitchell then dialed Selena. She answered groggily. It was near midnight. Mitchell, what's going on? In swift, clipped sentences, he explained the intrusion, the gunshot, the possible abduction. Selena cursed under her breath. You want me to file a police report? Or do you want me to hold off while you handle it privately? Mitchell paused, glancing at Edgar, who nursed his wounded pride on the floor. Hold off for now. I don't want a swarm of cops scaring away these guys if they do have Freya. I'd rather handle this quietly. but be on standby in case I need legal muscle tomorrow. All right, keep me posted. Once he was off the phone, Mitchell studied Edgar. You want to help me track them down, or do you plan to keep playing tough guy? Edgar scowled. I'm not your friend. If Freya's in trouble, I need her back too, but only because she has the connections to finalize the sale. I can't pay these guys alone. You're unbelievable, Mitchell muttered. My main concern is ensuring nobody drags Darius into this. I already have him off-site, safe with friends. A shadow of disdain crossed Edgar's features. I don't care about your kid. Mitchell's jaw tightened. That callous statement only intensified his resolve to keep Darius far away from this creep. Still, for the immediate crisis, Edgar might be a reluctant ally. Knowledge of the criminal's operation was valuable. Here's the deal, Mitchell said flatly. You give me everything you know about these goons. We find out if they snatched Freya or if she left on her own. After that, if I need to, I'll put them down. Then you can go to hell for all I care. Edgar exhaled shakily, then relented. Fine. There's a warehouse by the old shipping docks rumored to be their base. Freya never went there, but she told me if something went sideways, that's where the muscle would come from. Some guy named Alonzo runs it, apparently. Mitchell nodded. Alonzo. He made a mental note. All right. You're driving me there. The man bristled. Screw you. I'm not. Mitchell pinned him with a glare so cold Edgar flinched. You forgot who's holding the gun now. Move. They set out in Edgar's SUV, the night wind whipping past, as they sped down near deserted roads. Mitchell insisted on the passenger seat, weapon in hand, forcing Edgar to drive. Tension crackled between them, but neither spoke beyond the necessary directions. Streetlights cast sporadic pools of illumination, revealing Edgar's perspiring face. Mitchell's expression remained resolute, his mind locked on the possibility that Freya might be in real danger. Or maybe, he thought, she orchestrated this fiasco as a final attempt to vanish with the money. Twisting scenarios churned in his head, but the bottom line was simple. He refused to let Darius be threatened. If these criminals intended to target Mitchell's family, they'd discover they were messing with the wrong man. They reached the industrial district, passing rows of abandoned factories and rusted fences. A faint chemical odor clung to the air. Edgar slowed by a chain-link gate. The sign overhead, lit by a flickering lamp, read, Westport Marine Storage. Warehouse 7, Edgar muttered. Alonzo's territory is usually around the back. Mitchell peered into the darkness. Park behind that line of trucks. Then we approach on foot. Edgar hesitated, then complied. They stepped out, boots crunching on gravel. Mitchell scanned the area quiet, too quiet. A single overhead security lamp buzzed. The rest of the place was dimly lit by the distant glow of the city. In the gloom, they circled around the row of trucks. Mitchell clenched the gun under his jacket. Edgar walked a step behind him, hands raised slightly to show he wasn't pulling any fast moves. As they neared a battered metal door labeled Warehouse 7, they heard faint voices drifting from inside. Mitchell gestured for silence. He pressed his ear to a cracked window panel, straining to catch the conversation. Snippets of anger-laced Spanish filtered through, plus an English phrase here or there. She's no good worthless. If she can't pay, maybe use her as leverage. Freya was inside, apparently at their mercy. Mitchell inhaled. An unexpected pang of concern stabbed his chest. For all her betrayal, the idea of her being tortured or worse still turned his stomach. He'd never condoned someone being brutalized, not even his backstabbing wife. Darius might blame himself if something irreversible happened to his mother. Quietly, Mitchell motioned Edgar to the side. Stay put. If you so much as utter a sound, I'll consider you a threat. The man frowned. Just don't get me killed. Mitchell's mind raced through potential tactics. Storming in could be suicidal if they had multiple armed guards. Instead, he scouted around. He found a service ladder up to a catwalk, perfect vantage point for stealth reconnaissance. Edgar stayed below while Mitchell ascended carefully, testing each rung for noise. At the top, he edged along the catwalk, peering down through a broken skylight. The cavernous interior was lit by a few hanging bulbs. Pallets of unknown cargo were stacked on one side, and near the center, Freya sat on a wooden crate, hands bound, a bruise swelling on her cheek. Two men circled her, faces contorted with menace. A third man, taller, wearing a leather jacket, barked orders in Spanish. Mitchell recognized enough of the language to glean they were furious that Freya couldn't produce the money. The tall man, presumably Alonzo, demanded a phone call to someone who could pay. Freya spat back that Mitchell had locked everything down. She mentioned Edgar as well, cursing his incompetence. Mitchell's lips curled. She was basically confirming everything. Another pang of twisted pity flickered inside him. She was near tears, pleading for more time. Alonzo stepped closer, brandishing a short baton. Freya flinched, anticipating another strike. Mitchell clenched his teeth. If he let them continue, she might end up with permanent injuries or worse. Taking them down alone was risky, but leaving her to their cruelty was unthinkable, even if she'd tried to ruin him. His moral code wouldn't allow that. He also worried they'd shift focus to Darius next if Freya couldn't cough up money. He counted 3 men, possibly more out of view. He needed a distraction or backup, but Edgar was hardly reliable. Mitchell inhaled softly and unholstered the small pistol he'd taken from Edgar. He only had a handful of bullets. It would have to suffice. He carefully unlatched the skylight. Each movement had to be silent, or the men below would spot him. The plan formed in his mind. Cause enough noise to draw them away from Freya. Then pick them off, one by one, if necessary. A bold plan, but time was short. Positioning himself, Mitchell fired a single shot into a metal beam across the warehouse. The bullet clanged, echoing violently. The men jerked around, startled. One shouted, "Cuidado!" Alonzo barked an order, pointing 2 men to investigate the noise. They moved away from Freya's crate, weapons drawn. Perfect. Mitchell lined up his pistol on the first unsuspecting thug. He squeezed the trigger. The shot caught the man in the shoulder, spinning him. The second man fired blindly at the catwalk, bullets ricocheting off steel. Mitchell ducked behind a beam, heart hammering, returning fire. Sparks danced in the gloom. Freya shrieked, pressing her back against a pallet to avoid stray rounds. Alonzo roared, aiming upward. Another bullet whizzed past Mitchell's ear, dangerously close. He knew he couldn't remain pinned on that catwalk for long. The advantage of surprise was fleeting. Down below, Edgar must have heard the commotion. Mitchell glimpsed movement at ground level. Edgar, unbelievably, had crept inside. He crouched behind crates near the entrance, eyeing the thug Mitchell had shot. That man was down, writhing in pain, gun lying a few feet away. Mitchell fired another shot at the second thug, forcing him to dive behind a forklift. Then Alonzo flanked from the opposite side, firing a barrage at the catwalk. Mitchell flinched as bullets pinged the rail, shards of metal slicing the air. He had to move. Swiftly, he climbed down the adjacent ladder. Halfway down, the second thug appeared, trying to get an angle. Mitchell dropped the last few rungs, landing hard, twisting to slam his shoulder into the thug. They both crashed onto the cement. The man's pistol clattered away. They grappled, rolling. The thug was stocky, reeking of stale tobacco. Mitchell's training kicked in. He jammed an elbow into the man's throat, then hammered a punch across his jaw. The thug groaned, dazed, but tried to pull a knife from his belt. Mitchell wrenched the blade free and tossed it aside. Another well-placed strike to the temple, and the man slumped. Breath ragged, Mitchell spun, searching for Alonzo. He spotted the tall ringleader crouched behind a crate, scanning for a shot. Meanwhile, Edgar had inched toward Freya, working at the ropes binding her wrists. Alonzo whipped around, seeing Edgar. "Hey, get away from her!" He stepped out, gun raised, but Mitchell seized the distraction to lunge from behind. In a blur, he hooked an arm around Alonzo's neck, resting the gun hand upward. Two deafening shots fired into the ceiling. Alonzo was strong, muscles taut with desperation. He spun, trying to bash Mitchell against a crate. Mitchell gritted his teeth, using every ounce of leverage. The muzzle jerked around dangerously. One slip, and a bullet could tear through them both. Gritting his teeth, Mitchell hammered a knee into Alonzo's side. The man growled, choking for breath. Finally, Mitchell hooked his ankle around Alonzo's calf, toppling him. The gun clattered free. Alonzo flailed, trying to elbow Mitchell off. Mitchell delivered a punishing blow to the back of Alonzo's head, dazing him enough to pin him face down. Snatching a stray zip tie from his pocket, he always carried emergency gear. He bound Alonzo's wrists behind him. Silence, except for the moans of the injured thug. Mitchell glanced around. The second thug lay unmoving, unconscious. The first one had crawled behind a forklift, blood seeping from his shoulder. Edgar stood near Freya, her wrists freed. She clutched her bruised cheek, trembling. It was over, at least for the moment. Mitchell rose, keeping an eye on Alonzo, who spat curses from the ground. Edgar stepped away from Freya, warily eyeing Mitchell. The tension between them all was thick enough to slice. Freya met Mitchell's gaze. Her eyes flickered with equal parts relief and resentment. She opened her mouth, maybe to speak, but coughed instead. Mitchell said nothing. Let her realize she was alive only because he'd intervened. Minutes crawled by. Mitchell took the guns from the unconscious thugs, checking them for extra ammo. He found a handful of spare rounds. Edgar hovered, uncertain. Freya rubbed her sore wrists. At last, Mitchell broke the silence. "Call an ambulance for the man who shot. He might bleed out otherwise. I'm not looking to rack up a murder charge." Edgar nodded quickly, retrieving his phone. Freya sagged against the crate, pressing a hand to her bruised face. She still wore fancy heels and a sleek blouse, now smeared with grime. "Mitchell," she began, voice raspy. "They grabbed me at the house. I didn't—" He cut her off with an upraised hand. "You can skip the story. I heard enough from your lips earlier to know you were scheming to finish the sale behind my back. Or did you forget the audio I have of you and Edgar mocking me?" Her face twisted, a flash of wounded pride. "You have no idea how complicated. You conspired with him to take everything from me, from Darius. You tolerated his abuse of our son. I know exactly how complicated it is." Freya let out a shaky breath, tears threatening. "I was desperate. I made mistakes. But that doesn't mean I wanted to be brutalized by these thugs," Mitchell snorted. "Maybe not. Yet you invited them into our lives with your shady dealings. The blame is on you." Outside, a siren's distant wail signaled someone had called 911, possibly Edgar, or maybe a bystander who heard the gunshots. Mitchell turned to Freya, eyes cold. "We have a small window before cops swarm this place. Once they do, I can't guarantee you'll walk free. You might face charges too, depending on what we reveal." Edgar looked panicked. "What about me? If the cops come, they'll see I'm part of this. I fired shots. They'll dig into my record." Mitchell nodded grimly. "Yes, they will. But it's not my job to protect you. If you cooperate with me, help ensure these men can't hurt Darius or me again, I might speak in your favor." That's your only shot at leniency." Before Edgar could respond, Alonzo stirred, cursing in Spanish. Mitchell kicked the gun out of reach. "Same goes for you," Mitchell growled to the prone ringleader. "If you want an ambulance, you talk. Are there more of your crew on the way?" Alonzo sneered, spitting a glob of blood. "You'll regret crossing me. My people don't just forget." Mitchell pressed a foot against Alonzo's shoulder, pinning him. "Let them come. I'll bury them like I did you. Now, talk." The man glared, but his earlier bravado was undercut by fear. "I got a call from your wife. She said the money was coming. Then the bank froze. We demanded immediate payment. No more delays. We came to collect. She had nothing. So we took her here." He coughed. "We planned to hold her until you coughed up the cash. That's all." Freya closed her eyes, shuddering. Mitchell eyed her. She looked sick, with shame and residual terror. Good. She needed to feel the consequences of her betrayal. Flashing lights illuminated the dirty windows. Police vehicles screeched to a stop outside. The chaos within the warehouse had ended, but a new wave of drama was about to begin. Mitchell took charge. He instructed Edgar to stash the extra guns away from immediate view. No need to look like a small army. Then he told Freya to remain silent unless spoken to. She bristled but complied, likely too shaken to argue. Officers poured in, guns drawn, shouting commands. Mitchell held his hands up calmly, stepping forward to identify himself. "I'm Mitchell Mercer. These guys attacked my property earlier. We followed them here to rescue her." He gestured at Freya. One officer looked from Mitchell to Alonzo, who lay zip-tied on the ground. Another policeman frisked the unconscious thug. The man with the gunshot wound groaned in pain, prompting paramedics to rush in. The lead detective, a tall woman named Ramirez, demanded an explanation. Mitchell handed over the short version. Criminals extorting his wife, violence in his home, a rescue mission. He omitted certain details about the hidden finances and recorded evidence, simply stating he intervened for self-defense. Edgar hovered behind Mitchell, trembling. Freya clutched her bruised cheek, playing the victim. Mitchell noticed her subtle shift in demeanor. Her voice quavered as she told the detective how these men kidnapped her. She conveniently left out the part that she'd been colluding with them for money. Mitchell felt a flicker of disgust. Her manipulative skills were still intact. As paramedics wheeled out the wounded thug, Ramirez pulled Mitchell aside. "You realize vigilante actions aren't encouraged. If you'd called the police first..." Mitchell's gaze was flinty. "I had no time to wait. They were about to seriously harm my wife." Ramirez frowned, flipping open a small notepad. "And how does Edgar fit in?" Mitchell hesitated, then gave a half-truth. "He was helping me locate Freya. He knew something about these criminals' hideout." Edgar's face twitched in gratitude, relieved Mitchell wasn't incriminating him on the spot. Meanwhile, Alonzo glared from the corner as officers took statements. The tall ringleader muttered curses in Spanish, occasionally shooting Mitchell a look that promised revenge. "All right," Ramirez said. "We'll need formal statements from all of you. For now, you're free to go, but don't leave town. We'll be in touch." The district attorney might have questions about the shooting. Lucky nobody died. Mitchell nodded impassively. Let them investigate. He had enough documentation of the criminal's aggression to argue self-defense. Plus, given Alonzo's track record, the cops might be happy to shut down a known extortion ring. And so, after a tense hour, they left the warehouse. Freya rode with Mitchell in the passenger seat of his truck. Edgar parted ways, presumably to avoid more questions. Mitchell still felt uneasy letting Freya near him, but she had no ride otherwise. Besides, maybe during the drive they'd talk, or maybe she'd try to spin more lies. Chapter 5. Silence pervaded the truck's cabin as Mitchell steered through the dark, his knuckles tight on the wheel. Freya hunched against the passenger door, bruised cheek resting on her palm. City lights flickered by, revealing her tear-streaked face. But Mitchell's empathy was overshadowed by weeks of betrayal. Finally, she spoke. "Mitchell, I thank you for saving me back there." His eyes stayed on the road. "I didn't do it for you. I did it so Darius wouldn't lose his mother entirely." A tremor rippled across her lips. "I never wanted him to get hurt, but—" He cut her short, voice cold. "Edgar physically abused him with your knowledge. Don't pretend you cared for his well-being. This fiasco proves otherwise." Her eyes flashed with hurt or guilt. "I regret letting it go that far. I was in over my head. I needed money. I needed a way out of—" "You needed to rob me blind," Mitchell finished bitterly. "Use our house to pay off criminals, then run off with Edgar or maybe on your own. Don't sugarcoat it." She closed her eyes, tears slipping. "It's not that simple. You were always so controlling." He barked a mirthless laugh. "Controlling? Or disciplined? I worked to provide for you and Darius while you lied and schemed behind my back. If that's your definition of controlling, you need a dictionary." He turned a corner, heading toward the house. But halfway there, he remembered the place was still a crime scene, glass shards and bullet holes. He grimaced, changing course. "We can't go home tonight. Cops probably taped it off." Freya sank lower in the seat, voice a shaky whisper. "So what now?" "I'm dropping you at a motel. I'll secure a place for Darius. Then we figure out the legal fallout. You'd better get a lawyer. Actually, you'd better get two." At a shabby roadside motel, Mitchell pulled into the parking lot. Neon lights buzzed overhead. Freya stared at the flickering sign, expression bleak. "You're really leaving me here?" "Yes," he said flatly. "I refuse to house you anywhere near Darius. Not after everything." She bit her lip, clearly pained. I understand." Before she could exit, Mitchell grabbed her wrist, not gently. "One more thing. Don't you dare contact Darius without my permission. If you do, I'll use every scrap of evidence to bury you. Understood?" She nodded, tears welling again. "Understood." He released her. She climbed out, staggering slightly on her heels. He watched her limp toward the motel office. For a fleeting moment, a pang of old memories tugged at his chest. The day they married, her radiant smile, their honeymoon laughter. But those recollections were overshadowed by the present reality. She had destroyed every vestige of trust. He shook off the sentimentality. He had bigger priorities, protecting Darius from any lingering threats and ensuring these criminals, or Freya, never touched him again. As soon as Freya was out of sight, Mitchell drove to Calvin's place on the outskirts of town. Calvin was an old army buddy, tough and reliable. Over the phone, Calvin assured him that Darius was asleep, safe and sound. When Mitchell arrived, he found Calvin in the kitchen sipping coffee. The man was a burly figure, with a salt and pepper beard that belied his steady, calm presence. "He's crashed in the spare bedroom," Calvin said quietly. "Didn't ask too many questions. Just knew you had business." Mitchell slumped into a chair, exhaustion hitting him. "Thanks for looking out for him. Tonight got ugly. Freya was abducted by the criminals she owed money to. I had to intervene." Calvin's gaze hardened. "Jesus, is she okay?" "She's alive. That's about all I can say." Mitchell leaned forward, elbows on his thighs. "Listen, I might need to keep Darius here a bit longer. I'm not sure when it'll be safe to bring him home." Calvin nodded. "No problem. I can handle that. But what's your next move? If these guys are still out there, most are in custody or wounded, but their associates might come sniffing around. I have to reinforce our legal stance, gather more evidence, and keep Darius far from the crossfire." Calvin sipped his coffee, a thoughtful look crossing his face. You're aware Edgar might flip on you if it benefits him. He's a weasel. Mitchell exhaled. I know, but I have enough on him to deter that. He's not going to risk more charges, especially after brandishing a gun in front of me. A lull settled between them, heavy with unspoken tension. Finally, Calvin patted Mitchell's shoulder. Try to get some sleep. I got a spare couch. Darius will be happy to see you in the morning. Mitchell gave a tired nod. Thanks, brother. Early the next morning, Mitchell awoke to the smell of scrambled eggs and bacon. He groaned, rubbing stiff muscles. Last night's warehouse brawl left bruises. He found Darius in the kitchen, bright-eyed despite the chaos. The boy rushed forward, hugging Mitchell. Dad, you okay? Calvin said something bad happened with Mom. Mitchell gently ruffled his hair. I'm all right, kiddo. Your mom is safe for now. Things got rough, but we're handling it. Darius's expression clouded. I hate all this. Why can't we just, I don't know, be normal again? Mitchell's chest tightened. I wish we could, buddy. But sometimes life takes us down tough roads. You just gotta keep your head up. I'm making sure you're safe. That's the priority. Darius nodded, though tears glimmered. Mitchell guided him to the table for breakfast. Calvin served them plates, tactfully avoiding deeper conversation in front of the child. After breakfast, Mitchell stepped outside to call Ingrid. He updated her on the warehouse raid and the partial arrests. She listened, then informed him that the police took Alonzo and the others into custody. Preliminary charges included kidnapping, assault, illegal weapons possession. They'd likely remain locked up without bail, given their record. That's good, Mitchell said. What about Freya's legal situation? She was a victim in that scenario, but she's hardly innocent overall. Ingrid sighed. It's complicated. If you push the angle that she conspired with criminals, she might get indicted on separate charges, but the immediate kidnapping might overshadow that. The authorities might see her as a coerced participant. Then again, if we provide evidence of her direct involvement with the bridging loans, that changes things. Mitchell pinched the bridge of his nose. I'm not sure how far to push it. My priority is ensuring Darius's safety and finalizing a legal separation that grants me full custody. If Freya ends up behind bars, so be it. But I won't waste my energy chasing that unless she tries something else. Ingrid hesitated. I respect that. I do have more intel on Edgar. He's up to his neck in multiple shady deals. If we link Freya's signature to any of those, it nails them both. But it also means a messy court case. Send me everything. I'll decide next steps. Hanging up, Mitchell pondered the bigger picture. The criminals were neutralized for now. Freya was battered into partial submission. Edgar was lying low. The path was clear to fortify his custody claim. Yet a part of him still bristled with unresolved anger. He recalled Freya's tearful face in the truck. Was she truly remorseful, or just cornered? And what about Edgar? Would the snake attempt vengeance? The question gnawed at Mitchell. Stepping back into Calvin's house, he found Darius curled on the couch, scrolling his phone. The boy looked up anxiously. Dad, Mom just texted me from a weird number. Mitchell's heart pounded. Show me. Darius handed over the phone. The message read, Darius, baby, it's Mom. Please call me. I need to talk to you. I'm sorry for everything. Then a second message. Your dad's not telling you the full story. Please don't shut me out. Mitchell's jaw tightened. She was already trying to reach the boy despite his explicit warning. The fury simmered again. She never learns. He knelt by Darius. Listen, you don't have to talk to her if you don't want to. It's your choice. But I want you to be safe. Darius frowned. I miss her. But I'm also mad at her. Mitchell softened his tone. I understand. She's put us through a lot. If you want to respond, do it with me present, okay? No secrets. She might try to manipulate you. After a moment, Darius nodded. Okay, let's do it together. Mitchell nodded, guiding him to dial. The phone rang. Freya picked up instantly, her voice shaky with emotion. Darius? Honey? Darius's eyes glistened. Mom, Dad's here too. He wants me safe. A tense pause. Freya exhaled. I get it. I won't lie, there's a lot going on. I only want to say I love you. I never wanted you hurt. Mitchell stayed silent, letting the boy handle it. Darius bit his lip. Why'd you let Edgar? Freya sounded near tears. I was desperate. I thought he could solve our money problems, but it spiraled out of control. Mitchell cut in, voice level. That's enough. If you truly care, you'll keep your distance until the courts finalize custody. Don't confuse our son with half-truths. Freya's breath hitched. Mitchell, you can't cut me out of his life forever. He gave a short, humorless laugh. Watch me. Before she could protest, Mitchell ended the call. Darius looked torn, but Mitchell's firm expression brooked no argument. She won't change overnight, he told his son gently. We'll get through this. A day later, Selena arranged an emergency custody hearing to establish temporary guardianship for Darius. Freya was served notice at the motel, forced to attend if she didn't want to lose all parental rights on the spot. Mitchell, escorted by Selena, entered the small family courtroom. Freya stood on the opposite side with a frazzled public defender. Her bruises were visible, drawing some pity from the onlookers, but Mitchell's side had reams of evidence that overshadowed any sympathy. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Branham, called the session to order. Mitchell presented recorded statements about Freya's complicity in endangering Darius, Edgar's violence, and the shady financial maneuvers. Freya's lawyer tried to paint her as an abused spouse, manipulated by Edgar's threats, but it rang hollow compared to the documented proof. Midway through the hearing, the tension soared. Selena introduced the hospital records showing Darius's injuries and statements from doctors who suspected ongoing abuse. Freya fidgeted, tears escaping. She insisted she never laid a hand on Darius, but the judge's face remained impassive. In a dramatic twist, Ingrid arrived mid-hearing, delivering fresh documents, screenshots of Freya's text messages with Edgar, mocking Mitchell's gullibility, referencing how Darius needed discipline. The text date coincided with Darius's bruises. A hush fell over the courtroom as Ingrid's evidence was submitted. Freya's face crumpled. She stammered a half-baked explanation that Edgar typed those texts from her phone, but the judge had heard enough. She slammed her gavel, pronouncing that Darius would remain solely in Mitchell's care until further notice. Freya was restricted to supervised visitation, if any. An audible sigh of relief escaped Mitchell. Darius was safe, legally protected. Freya's eyes brimmed with despair, but the judge's decision was final. Outside the courtroom, Freya cornered Mitchell, ignoring Selena's glare. I know you hate me, she whispered, but I'm still Darius's mother. Don't let him forget that. He stared at her with steely resolve. I won't lie to him. He knows you exist. Whether he forgives you is up to him. I'm done shielding you from consequences. Her chin trembled, but no words came. She turned on her heel and hurried off, her cheap black heels clicking on the marble floor. Selena exhaled. Well, that was intense, but we got what we wanted. Full custody for now. Mitchell gave a single nod. Thank you. Next step is to finalize the divorce and secure the house. Then we can see if charges against her are warranted. Selena eyed him thoughtfully. You sure you want to keep pushing? You've got custody already. He folded his arms. I'm not letting her slither away from accountability. She knew what Edgar was doing to our boy. She tried to ruin me financially. If the law punishes her, so be it. Selena's eyes flicked with respect. Got it. A new routine formed. Darius resumed a semblance of normal life, sleeping at Calvin's place or with Ingrid if Mitchell worked late. Meanwhile, Mitchell spent days dealing with the battered house, coordinating repairs. He replaced the shattered door, boarded up bullet holes, and meticulously cleaned every trace of violence from the living room. Each hammered nail felt like a step toward reclaiming his territory. During this process, an unexpected visitor appeared. Detective Ramirez from the warehouse scene. She came by in plain clothes, stepping carefully over the debris as Mitchell pried out broken floorboards. "Afternoon," Ramirez greeted. "I tried calling, but your line was busy." Mitchell set down his tools. "Detective, something I can help you with?" She studied him. "We have reason to believe Alonzo's associates might not be done. Word is, they suspect you orchestrated the entire sting that landed half their crew behind bars. Any sign of suspicious vehicles or threats?" Mitchell's eyes hardened. "Not yet. But I'm ready if they come." Ramirez gave a wry smile. "Figured as much. Just letting you know we can assign a patrol car if you feel unsafe." He shook his head. "Thanks, but I'll manage. I have security measures in place. If you pick up any intel on direct threats, let me know." Ramirez scribbled a note. "Will do. Also, we're building a case against Alonzo. If you're willing to testify about the kidnapping, it would help. I assume your wife might be less cooperative." He inclined his head. "I'll testify. He threatened me and my wife. That's enough reason to see him locked up for good." Days stretched into a week. Freya's attempts to contact Darius were stymied by the supervised visitation order. She could only see him under a state-appointed observer, which she never scheduled, presumably out of shame or fear. Edgar stayed off the radar entirely, presumably dealing with his own legal woes. Yet Mitchell's gut told him the drama wasn't over. The phone calls from certain blocked numbers, the occasional black SUV idling near the street corner signs that Alonzo's network might be scouting for an opportunity. Mitchell kept a loaded firearm within arm's reach at home. He also updated Calvin and Ingrid on possible threats. They rallied, ready to defend. One crisp morning, Mitchell discovered a threatening note pinned to his front door with a knife. "Drop the charges or lose more than your house." Beneath it, a crude drawing of a tombstone. The intimidation tactic fueled Mitchell's anger. He tore the note free, mouth set in a grim line. He refused to be bullied. Seeking to dismantle the remaining threat, Mitchell made an appointment with an old contact from his Army intelligence days, a quiet man named Sawyer, who specialized in discreet risk assessments. They met in a nondescript cafe, sipping black coffee while the world bustled outside. Mitchell explained the situation. "These criminals want me to drop charges. They might escalate. I need to make sure they can't blindside me or my son." Sawyer nodded, flipping through a small notepad. "I can run a background check on any rumored affiliates, find addresses, track patterns. If you want a direct confrontation, I can provide advanced security solutions." Mitchell considered. "I prefer a preemptive strike in some form legally, if possible, or otherwise. But I won't endanger my son or innocent people. I just want them neutralized." Sawyer's mouth curved slightly. "Understood. Let me see what I can dig up." They parted ways. Mitchell felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wouldn't just sit and wait. If these thugs insisted on pressing him, he'd end it once and for all. He'd spent too long in the passive role while Freya and Edgar manipulated him. That Mitchell was gone. Later that afternoon, Ingrid called with a bombshell. Edgar had approached the district attorney's office, offering to testify against Alonzo's crew in exchange for immunity from certain charges. This meant Edgar was flipping sides again, a survival tactic. but it also meant he might drag Freya deeper into the crossfire. Mitchell listened quietly, tension coiling. So, Edgar's painting himself as a victim now? Pretty much, Ingrid said. He's claiming Freya manipulated him, but we both know that's a lie. He has his own guilt. The DA might accept partial testimony if it helps lock up bigger fish, though. Let them do it, Mitchell said, voice flinty. If it secures a longer sentence for Alonzo, fine. But I want no illusions that Edgar's some innocent puppy. If the DA tries to dismiss the child abuse angle, I'll raise hell. Ingrid paused. I understand. The best approach might be to meet with the DA and present the contradictory evidence. They'll see Edgar's not squeaky clean. Mitchell sighed. All right, let's schedule it. The more scumbags we put away, the safer my son is. He ended the call, gazing at the repaired living room. The scars of gunfire were gone physically, but emotionally. The damage lingered. He clenched his fists, determined to see this battle through. Chapter 6. A hush blanketed the district attorney's conference room. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating a polished table where Mitchell, Ingrid, and Selena sat on one side. Across from them, an assistant DA named Holloway, flanked by Edgar and his legal counsel. The tension was palpable. Edgar kept his gaze down, avoiding Mitchell's glare. Mitchell's posture was erect, exuding quiet authority. Ingrid's phone beeped with incoming messages from her courthouse sources. Selena meticulously arranged documents in front of her. Holloway cleared her throat. Thank you all for coming. We are here to discuss Edgar's proposed cooperation in the Alonzo case. He's prepared to provide details on the extortion ring in exchange for reduced sentencing or immunity regarding certain lesser offenses. Mitchell allowed a moment of silence to underscore his disapproval. Then he spoke. He's not just guilty of lesser offenses. He threatened me with a gun, conspired to defraud me, and physically harmed my son. Edgar fidgeted. It wasn't like that. Freya orchestrated half of... Mitchell leveled him with a scorching look. Shut it. I have audio recordings that say otherwise. Holloway raised a placating hand. Let's keep this civil. We're open to hearing your evidence, Mr. Mercer. However, we also need Edgar's testimony against Alonzo. Without his inside knowledge, we might not get the full scope of their operation, Selena interjected. We're not against nailing Alonzo, but we demand Edgar's role in child abuse be addressed. No total immunity. He must face consequences. Edgar's lawyer frowned. That's negotiable. But we want a cap on jail time, plus relocation if there's retaliation. Ingrid quietly slid a folder forward. Here are text transcripts of Edgar and Freya discussing the discipline of Darius' explicit references to physical harm, praising intimidation. Also, a sworn statement from Darius about Edgar's threats. That's child endangerment, borderline torture. Holloway skimmed the documents, brows knitting. She sighed. This is serious. Edgar, you're looking at potential felony charges. Edgar swallowed hard, glaring at Mitchell like it was all his fault, but Mitchell felt no pity. Let him squirm. After a tense hour of negotiations, they reached a tentative agreement. Edgar would testify comprehensively against Alonzo's crew, unveiling details of money laundering, illegal arms deals, everything. In return, the DA might reduce the sentence, but not erase it. Edgar could still face a few years behind bars, plus mandatory restitution to Mitchell for emotional harm inflicted on Darius. Mitchell found the arrangement barely acceptable. He wanted Edgar rotting for a decade, but if this guaranteed Alonzo's network was dismantled, it was a step forward. And the partial restitution was a small but symbolic victory. Edgar avoided eye contact the entire time. At the end, as they packed up, Mitchell leaned in, voice low. You come near my son again, I don't care what deals you make. I will destroy you. Edgar's face drained. He mumbled something inaudible, then hurried away with his lawyer. Mitchell watched him go, feeling a sense of finality. At least that scumbag would be off the streets eventually. In the hallway, outside, Ingrid patted Mitchell's shoulder. "You did good. This will help bury Alonzo and keep Darius safe." He exhaled. "Safe is all I want. Now I can focus on Freya's next moves. She's likely feeling cornered." Selena chimed in. "We can push for the divorce hearing soon. With the new custody order, you have a strong case to keep the house." Mitchell nodded, tension easing. Finally, the path to severing ties with Freya was opening. Perhaps he could reclaim normalcy, if any existed, after such a harrowing betrayal. They parted ways. Mitchell walked outside into the crisp afternoon air. He inhaled, letting the weight of the day slip from his shoulders. Step by step, he was clearing the wreckage of this fiasco, forging a life where Darius could thrive without fear. That evening, Mitchell returned to Calvin's place. He found Darius on the front porch tossing a basketball idly. The boy brightened at the sight of his dad. "How'd it go?" Darius asked. "Did you see Edgar? Did you see Mom?" Mitchell ruffled his hair, guiding him inside. "Saw Edgar. He's making deals with the DA, probably heading to jail. Your mom didn't show up. She's got her own issues." Darius's face was a mix of relief and sadness. "So we don't have to worry about him anymore?" Mitchell knelt to meet his son's gaze. "Not in the same way. He'll be out of our lives soon enough. As for your mom, she still has some rights, but the court is on our side. We're safe, kiddo." The boy nodded, voice trembling. "I'm glad. I was scared he'd show up again." Mitchell pulled him into a hug. "You're safe. Always." Days slid into a calmer routine. Mitchell split his time between finalizing repairs at the house and exploring a new job opportunity that offered flexible hours he wanted to be home more for Darius. The looming divorce hearing was set for next week. Freya stayed quiet, presumably reeling from the fallout. Mitchell presumed she lacked money for a real lawyer, stuck with public representation. Part of him pitied her predicament, but he forced himself to remember Darius's bruises. No pity was deserved. Twice, though, he spotted a dark sedan trailing him around town, possibly Alonzo's men or an affiliated gang. Detective Ramirez had warned him. Mitchell took note of the license plate and texted Sawyer. The sedan vanished soon after, leaving Mitchell with an unsettled feeling that the storm wasn't fully over. Sure enough, Sawyer called back with info. "That plate belongs to a guy named Rivas, one of Alonzo's underlings who wasn't arrested. He's known for intimidation tactics. Tread carefully." Mitchell thanked him, then asked for a deeper background check. If Rivas planned a revenge strike, Mitchell wouldn't be caught off guard. He stashed a loaded sidearm in a hidden compartment of his truck and carried a smaller weapon in an ankle holster. That might seem paranoid, but after all he'd endured, it felt prudent. One afternoon, while Darius was at school and Calvin was at his day job, Mitchell tested the newly installed home security system. Cameras covered every angle, a silent sentinel ensuring no intruders could approach undetected. As he tweaked the settings, he reflected on how drastically life had changed. A few months ago, he was a typical father, trusting his wife. Now, he was practically running a fortress. The weekend arrived, bringing the day of the final divorce hearing. Mitchell arrived at the courthouse, accompanied by Selena. Freya was already there, wearing a subdued black dress, face pale. She seemed smaller, diminished by guilt and the bruises that had yet to fully heal. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over Mitchell, but he hardened his resolve. She'd do anything to manipulate him if he let his guard down. He followed Selena into the courtroom, where a different judge presided, a no-nonsense older man named Judge Carlisle. Freya's public defender made a feeble attempt to portray her as a misguided spouse, roped into criminal entanglements by Edgar. But Selena countered with robust evidence of her premeditated property scams, not to mention neglect of Darius's well-being. Mitchell watched Freya's shoulders sag further with each damning piece of testimony. Mid-hearing, a sudden twist erupted. An associate from the district attorney's office entered with a sealed envelope. After a brief word with the judge, Carlisle cleared his throat and addressed the room. "It appears we have additional evidence from an ongoing criminal investigation involving Mrs. Mercer. This directly impacts the property dispute." Freya's face paled. She glanced around, dread mounting. Mitchell exchanged a glance with Selena, both curious. The judge opened the envelope, scanning the contents. He looked unimpressed. "Mrs. Mercer," he said sternly, "it appears you not only attempted to shift the house into your name alone, but also leveraged it as collateral for an illegal loan. That further cements your lack of good faith. Moreover, these documents indicate you knowingly allowed your partner, Edgar, to discipline your child. Is that correct?" Freya's voice trembled. "He threatened me. I had no choice." Carlisle's gaze hardened. "This hearing is about divorce, but the child endangerment portion is relevant to the property dispute. I see no reason to award you any portion of the marital assets." He hammered down his gavel. "Final order. Mitchell Mercer retains sole ownership of the marital home and full custody of the minor child. Mrs. Mercer is granted no spousal support. Visitation rights remain supervised and at the discretion of the family court." Freya's mouth opened in shock. She swayed, nearly collapsing. The court bailiff stepped forward, guiding her away. Mitchell felt a mixture of triumph and grim satisfaction. Justice had been served in the divorce sense, though he knew this might push Freya to desperation. Outside, as cameras flashed, the local media had picked up some threads of the scandal. Freya confronted Mitchell with teary eyes. "You wanted it all. Now you have it. Are you happy?" He stared at her, unflinching. "I'm not happy. I'm just relieved. Darius is safe, the house is mine, and your toxic influence is removed. That's what matters." She shook her head. "I'll fight back. I may have lost the property, but I can still—" "Still what?" Mitchell challenged. "Alonzo's in jail, Edgar's flipping. The court sees you as an unfit mother. You have no money left. What are you going to do, Freya?" She shuddered, tears rolling. "I don't know, but don't think you've heard the last of me." He gave her a cold once-over. "That's your choice. But push me again, and I'll see you behind bars for every illegal stunt you pulled." Her lips trembled, but she said nothing more, turning away and stumbling off. Selena touched Mitchell's arm. "Let's go. She's done enough damage." For a time, it seemed like things might settle. Mitchell resumed a normal schedule with Darius, who brightened each day away from the turmoil. They ate dinners together, watched movies, even went fishing on weekends. The weight of betrayal was still there, but less suffocating. Ingrid kept Mitchell updated on the Alonzo case. With Edgar's testimony and Mitchell's statements, the prosecution built a strong case for a lengthy sentence. Alonzo's remaining henchmen had scattered or been locked up for smaller charges. The immediate threat to Mitchell's household receded. One evening, as father and son shared a quiet dinner, Darius blurted out a question. "Dad, do you think Mom will come back a better person someday?" It caught Mitchell off guard. He set down his fork, meeting his son's earnest gaze. "I don't know," Mitchell admitted gently. "She'd have to want to change, and that's not something we can control. All we can do is live our lives. If she ever shows she's truly sorry and the courts agree, Maybe you can see her again safely." Darius nodded thoughtfully, tears glistening. "Okay." But the final act of vengeance wasn't over. Late one night, while Mitchell dozed in front of the TV, a shrill alarm startled him upright. The security system flashed red. Movement at the backyard fence. Adrenaline flooded him. He grabbed his pistol, heart pounding. Peering at the surveillance monitor, he saw a dark figure scaling the fence, heading toward the rear door. Another lurked behind the garage. This was no random burglary. These men moved with purpose. Mitchell dialed 911 on speaker, voice tight. "Intruders on my property. 2. Maybe more." He gave his address. The operator confirmed a dispatch. Meanwhile, he flicked on the exterior floodlights to disorient them. One figure cursed and ducked behind a bush. The other advanced, apparently armed. Mitchell glimpsed a flash of steel. He exhaled, bracing himself. If they tried to break in, he'd respond with force. The next seconds unfolded in a blur. The intruder at the back door smashed the glass with a heavy tool. Mitchell aimed through the window from an angle, not wanting to shoot blindly. "Stop!" he barked. "Police are on the way! Drop your weapon!" A muzzle flash erupted from outside. A bullet shattered the sliding door, missing Mitchell by inches. He ducked behind the kitchen counter. Return fire was inevitable. He lined up his pistol and fired 2 shots at the intruder. One bullet caught the man in the shoulder or chest. He yowled in pain, dropping. The second figure tried to flank from the side window. Darius, awakened by the chaos, cried out from the hallway. Mitchell shouted, "Stay down, buddy!" He pivoted to intercept the second attacker. Through the window glass, he saw a silhouette. Another gunshot blasted the frame. Splinters showered the kitchen. Gritting his teeth, Mitchell fired a trio of shots. The silhouette staggered back, presumably hit. Then sirens wailed. Flashing red and blue lights filled the street as the front yard lit up with arriving patrol cars. Within minutes, officers surrounded the property. The intruders, wounded or retreating, were apprehended at the fence line. Mitchell kept the door locked, waiting until the police announced themselves. Only then did he lower his weapon and let them in, mindful to show no threat. A chaotic scene ensued. Paramedics tended to the injured intruders. One had a bullet wound in the upper torso, the other in the arm. Mitchell recognized them from photos Sawyer had shown him Rivas's goons, likely seeking revenge for Alonzo. Or perhaps Freya orchestrated a final sabotage, though that seemed unlikely. This felt more like criminal retaliation. A shaken Darius clung to Mitchell, eyes wide. Detective Ramirez arrived, praising Mitchell for acting in self-defense. Security camera footage confirmed the men struck first. Another wave of relief washed over Mitchell. The law was on his side again. The next morning, he found a text from Sawyer. They were definitely Alonzo's men. "Looks like they tried a last-ditch hit. Good job defending yourself." Mitchell exhaled. Maybe now, with them behind bars and Alonzo locked up, the final threat was sealed. He cradled Darius, who still trembled from the night's ordeal. "It's over, buddy," Mitchell murmured softly. "I swear, it's over now." Darius nodded, burying his face in Mitchell's shoulder. "You promise?" Mitchell closed his eyes, hugging him tight. "I promise." Chapter 7. Mitchell stood in his living room at dawn, gazing at the wreckage left by the night's attack. The men who'd tried to break in lay in the hospital under police custody, victims of Mitchell's swift marksmanship and the timely arrival of law enforcement. Darius was still asleep in a makeshift bed at Calvin's home, away from the chaos. He exhaled, noticing how the first rays of sunlight highlighted bullet holes in the wall. Shards of glass lay scattered across the floor, glittering like tiny fragments of a shattered past. His mind churned with the idea that, Despite all he'd done, despite outmaneuvering Freya, Edgar and Alonzo, danger still lurked on the fringes. Yet a grim sense of relief also washed over him. The ringleader, Alonzo, was behind bars. Edgar was heading to prison. Freya had lost all leverage. This latest assault felt like a final, desperate gasp from a criminal network that was dying, and Mitchell had survived. They had not stolen his resolve. He dialed Detective Ramirez, who answered with a groggy voice. "It's Mitchell Mercer," he said quietly. "I need you to confirm those men from last night are part of Alonzo's circle." Ramirez sighed. "Yes, they are. Rivas's loyalists. They're not talking, but we found incriminating phone logs. You can rest easier now, Mitchell. They're done." A wave of exhaustion overcame him. "Rest easier," she'd said. He rubbed his temples. "I want that more than anything." Later that morning, Mitchell fetched Darius from Calvin's place. The boy scrambled into Mitchell's truck, anxious eyes flicking over his father's tired features. "Are you okay, Dad?" Mitchell forced a reassuring nod. "I'm fine, buddy. The police came, took those guys away. You won't have to worry about them anymore." Darius stared down at his hands. "I hate this. I hate being scared. Hate all these people who keep coming after us." Mitchell clenched the steering wheel. "I know. But it's nearly over. Alonzo's locked up, Edgar's out of the picture, and your mom, well, she can't cause more harm from behind bars." Darius inhaled, shoulders relaxing slightly. "Promise?" Mitchell met his son's gaze in the rearview mirror. "With everything in me, I promise." He drove them to a nearby diner for pancakes, hoping a little normalcy might soothe the lingering fear. But as they settled into a booth, Mitchell couldn't shake the tingling awareness that even if the criminals were finished, emotional scars took longer to heal. Freya's absence loomed in the background. Despite her manipulations and betrayals, she'd once been part of their family. Darius didn't talk about her much these days, except in occasional bursts of anger or sadness. Mitchell worried about the boy bottling up deeper feelings. Over sticky plates of syrup-laden pancakes, Darius finally mustered a question. "Dad, do you think Mom regrets it all? Like, regrets Edgar, regrets hurting me?" Mitchell set down his fork. "Honestly, I don't know. Regret can exist, but it doesn't always fix what happened. She made her choices." Darius's eyes flickered with a complicated blend of hurt and longing. "Sometimes I remember when she was nice. She'd joke with me, take me for ice cream. It feels like it happened to someone else." Mitchell nodded slowly. "I get it. People change sometimes for the worse. Doesn't erase the good times, but it means we have to protect ourselves now." They paid their bill and left. The sun was shining brightly, the sky a brilliant blue, almost mocking the storm of drama that had engulfed them. Mitchell felt a stirring in his chest, a determination to secure a better future, to help Darius move beyond the memories. As the weeks passed, Mitchell began mending the physical damage to his home. Calvin and Ingrid pitched in on weekends, helping replace shattered windows and patch bullet holes. Bit by bit, the house regained stability. Yet for all the hammering and painting, Mitchell sensed the intangible sense of safety was harder to restore. Darius sometimes awoke in the middle of the night, calling for his dad, reliving nightmares of Edgar's cruelty. Mitchell would sit at the boy's bedside holding his hand until the trembling eased. One Sunday afternoon, Ingrid arrived with groceries and an unexpected visitor, Noah, another of Mitchell's old army buddies. Noah had heard about the fiasco and traveled from out of state to check on him. "You stubborn bastard," Noah greeted with a half-smile, hugging Mitchell. "Couldn't call me for backup earlier?" Mitchell shrugged, fighting a grin. "Didn't want to drag you into my personal meltdown, but I appreciate you coming." The four of them, Noah, Ingrid, Calvin, and Mitchell, shared a subdued lunch, discussing the scattered threads of the fiasco. Darius hovered quietly, absorbing new faces with a shy curiosity. Mitchell caught glimpses of Noah giving the boy a reassuring pat on the back. Amid the warmth of camaraderie, Mitchell realized how vital these connections were. He'd spent so long facing betrayal from Freya and Edgar that he nearly forgot genuine loyalty existed. A new challenge emerged when an unexpected letter arrived from the county courthouse. A hearing date was set for final sentencing in Freya's case. Mitchell had given depositions, but the court requested his presence for any victim impact statement. Darius was also invited to submit a statement, though it wasn't mandatory. Mitchell weighed the emotional toll. Would it help Darius find closure to speak about how his mother's actions harmed him, or would it reopen wounds? At dinner that night, Mitchell gently broached the topic. "Listen, Bud," he said softly. "The court's final hearing about your mom is in 2 weeks. They might let you share how you feel." Darius chewed his lip. "I don't know. She's still my mom, even if she messed up. But she scared me, Dad. She let Edgar." His voice broke. Mitchell rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You don't have to do anything. There's no pressure. The judge already has a ton of evidence. I only mention it because sometimes speaking up can help you process. But it's your choice." Darius's eyes welled. After a moment, he nodded. "I'll think about it." Selena, who'd been monitoring Freya's legal fiasco, visited soon after. She carried a stack of papers detailing Freya's potential sentence range, likely several years in prison for conspiracy, child endangerment, and attempted fraud. Edgar, having turned partial witness, might get a lighter term, but not by much. Sipping coffee in Mitchell's living room, Selena gave him a measured look. "So, how do you feel about Freya possibly going away for a long time?" Mitchell fiddled with a pen, conflicting emotions gnawing at him. "She almost destroyed me, nearly destroyed Darius. Part of me wants her locked up forever. But a tiny part, we had good memories once." Selena's eyes softened. "No one will judge you for that ambivalence. She's still the mother of your child, no matter how twisted things got." He exhaled. "Darius needs closure, and maybe I do too. I just want to ensure she can't manipulate him or me from behind bars." Selena handed him some forms. "You can request a protective order restricting contact if you want. That way, any letter or phone call from her has to be filtered through the court." Mitchell glanced at the forms. "Might be wise. I'm done with her endless manipulation." Meanwhile, a simmering worry gnawed at the edges of Mitchell's mind. Would Alonzo's network truly remain dormant with him in prison? Or could new opportunists pick up where he left off? Sawyer assured Mitchell that their structure was decimated, but Mitchell never underestimated a cornered criminal. Noah, who had a knack for reading Mitchell's mood, pulled him aside one evening. "I can stick around if you want. Provide some extra security, watch your six." Mitchell gave a grateful half smile. "I appreciate it truly, but you've got your own life, man." Noah gripped his shoulder firmly. "Brother, we served together. We bled together. If you need me, I'm here. That's not up for debate." A surge of gratitude filled Mitchell's chest. "Then stay, if only for a bit. Let me show you a calmer side of life once the dust finally settles." They laughed, the sound cutting through the tension that had dominated so many months. A week later, Darius approached Mitchell with a determined glint in his eye. "Dad, I want to do that victim statement. Not to be cruel to Mom, but to let her know she can't just pretend nothing happened." Mitchell's heart swelled with pride and heartbreak. "If you're sure, buddy, I'll support you." Darius nodded, fiddling nervously with his hands. "Will it help me feel better?" Mitchell knelt beside him, meeting the boy's gaze. "It might. Speaking your truth can release a burden. But only you can decide if it's worth it. Just know I'll be there the whole time, okay?" Darius bit his lip, then threw his arms around Mitchell's neck in a tight hug. "Thanks, Dad." Mitchell held him close, vowing once again never to let anything tear them apart. Chapter 8. The courthouse bustled with tense anticipation on the morning of Freya's final sentencing. Journalists milled around, hoping to snag a sensational quote. Mitchell guided Darius through a side entrance, hoping to shield him from intrusive questions. Ingrid and Selena flanked them, expressions sober. Freya was led into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, hair lank and face gaunt. Gone was the polished, cunning facade. She looked hollow. Edgar, seated beside a separate defense attorney, had also lost his arrogant swagger. He wore a county-issued jumpsuit, bandaged from a recent scuffle behind bars. Mitchell's pulse pounded as he took a seat. Darius clung to his father's arm. They had rehearsed the boy's statement, ensuring he felt prepared. Yet now, seeing Freya so diminished, Mitchell sensed Darius's resolve waver. Freya glanced up, eyes wet, locking onto Darius with an odd mixture of sorrow and desperation. The bailiff called the session to order, and the judge, a stern-faced woman named Carmichael, began reviewing the charges. One by one, the prosecutors outlined Freya's crimes: conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted parental kidnapping, child endangerment, collusion with a violent offender. Edgar's portion included assault, attempted extortion, and related charges. The official language hammered home how deep their betrayals ran. Freya's public defender argued that she'd been coerced by Edgar, pointing to bruises and alleged intimidation. But the prosecutor shredded that narrative with evidence of Freya's own manipulative texts and recorded threats. Mitchell watched Freya shrink into her seat, face pale. Finally, the judge turned to Mitchell. "Mr. Mercer, we understand your son may wish to make a brief statement. Is that correct?" Mitchell stood, guiding Darius forward. The boy's hands trembled, but he squared his shoulders and faced the judge. His gaze flicked to Freya, who sat transfixed. Darius spoke quietly at first, voice trembling. I just want to say that what happened really hurt me. Edgar hurt me physically. Mom let it happen. She told me to keep quiet or else Dad would be in trouble. I was scared, and I felt like she chose Edgar over me." A ripple of sympathy coursed through the courtroom. Mitchell placed a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. Darius continued, tears lining his cheeks. "I still love my mom because she's my mom. But I'm angry and sad. I want the judge to know I didn't make anything up. I just want to feel safe again, and I want her to understand she can't do this to me or anyone else." He wiped his face, swallowing hard. "That's all." The judge's expression softened. "Thank you, young man. I appreciate your bravery." Darius retreated to Mitchell's side, clinging to his hand. Freya's eyes overflowed with tears. She looked ready to speak, but the judge motioned for silence. The moment was raw, the final nail in a coffin of illusions Freya might have harbored. Next came sentencing arguments. The prosecution urged a firm penalty for Freya, citing how she betrayed maternal duty. They acknowledged Edgar's partial cooperation, but insisted on prison time given his violent acts. Freya's attorney pleaded for leniency, referencing her emotional turmoil, alleged remorse, and a desire to rehabilitate. But the prosecutor brandished transcripts of her threats, her manipulations. The contrast was stark, leaving the defense little ground to stand on. The judge leaned forward, hands folded. "Mrs. Mercer, do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Freya rose shakily, wrists cuffed. She glanced at Darius, tears streaking her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice breaking. "Darius, I never wanted to hurt you. I was lost. I wish I could take it all back." Mitchell felt his son stiffen. The apology might be genuine or a final manipulative ploy, impossible to tell. Freya's shoulders shook. "Please, just believe I love you. That's all." The judge's face remained impassive. "Thank you. Now I will deliver sentencing." Carmichael's words fell like a gavel on Freya's life. Multiple years in prison, no chance of parole for at least half her sentence. Additional restrictions blocked her from contacting Darius unless a family court deemed it suitable in the future. Edgar received his own sentence, slightly less time, but significant nonetheless. Freya sank to her seat, sobbing as the bailiff prepared to escort her away. Edgar stared hollowly. No fight left in him. Mitchell felt Darius shaking, overwhelmed by the gravity of it all. The judge addressed Mitchell directly. "I trust this concludes a painful chapter for your family. May your son heal from these wounds." Mitchell bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Honor." Outside, cameras flashed again. This time, Mitchell shielded Darius behind him, ignoring the barrage of questions. Ingrid and Selena flanked them, urging the press to back off. They managed to reach the parking lot, hearts still pounding. Darius leaned into Mitchell. "Dad, can we go home now?" Mitchell ruffled his hair gently. "Yeah, kiddo, we're done here." Selena placed a supportive hand on Mitchell's shoulder. "I'll handle any media inquiries. You just focus on taking care of Darius." He nodded, grateful. It felt surreal, stepping away from the courthouse with finality in the air. Freya was gone. Edgar was gone. The criminals were locked up. The storm had subsided, though the emotional turbulence would linger. That evening, Mitchell took Darius to a quiet lakeside park. They watched the sun sink beyond rippling waters, a hush settling over them. The boy's face was still etched with tension, but a calm acceptance mingled there too. Darius spoke first. "I saw how Mom cried. Maybe she does regret it. But I can't forgive her yet." Mitchell draped an arm around the boy. "That's okay. Forgiveness isn't an obligation. It's a choice you make on your own terms, if you ever choose it at all." A gentle breeze stirred the reeds along the shoreline. Darius nodded slowly. "I feel a bit lighter, though. Like I said what I needed to say." Mitchell's throat tightened. "I'm proud of you for that. More than words can say." They gazed at the water, the sky tinted with pink and orange hues. A new horizon seemed to beckon, uncharted but free from immediate threats. Mitchell vowed to build a stable life from here, a life where trust, not betrayal, defined their days. In the following weeks, local media briefly sensationalized Freya's sentencing. Talking heads debated whether her punishment was fair, if the child endangerment should carry more weight. A few tabloids dredged up Mitchell's background, speculating on his military history. But with Selena's careful handling, the press lost interest fast. Darius resumed a normal routine: school days, basketball practice, weekend outings with Calvin, Ingrid, or Noah. He laughed more often. Mitchell discovered he enjoyed cooking dinners, teaching Darius how to grill burgers in the backyard. One afternoon, Ingrid dropped by with fresh updates. "Alonzo's network is fully dismantled. The feds took over the case. They're seizing assets, left and right." She paused. "It's truly over, Mitchell." He let out a long breath. "Thank you for everything. You and Selena saved us." She gave a soft smile. "Don't forget your own strength. I've never seen you give up." Meanwhile, the house, once riddled with bullet holes, was nearly fully restored. Calvin and Noah helped repaint the interior. Darius chose a vibrant shade of blue for his bedroom. He wanted a bold color to replace the gloom of the past. Mitchell found therapy in the physical labor, each stroke of paint a step away from old ghosts. One weekend, a truck pulled into the driveway with new furniture for the living room. Mitchell had decided it was time to replace anything tainted by memories of violence. As workers carried pieces inside, he guided them to place a comfy recliner near the window, somewhere he could read and keep an eye on the front yard. Darius bounded in, wide-eyed at the fresh setup. "Wow, Dad, it actually looks homey." Mitchell ruffled his hair. "That's the goal. A real home, free from secrets." His chest swelled with something akin to pride. The house was his domain again, not a battleground. One evening, after a long day of final touches, Mitchell collapsed onto the new recliner. Darius was fast asleep upstairs. The hush of the night felt peaceful, not ominous. For the first time in so long, Mitchell allowed himself to dream about the future. Images flickered through his mind. Taking Darius to soccer games, celebrating birthdays without fear, maybe even finding companionship again. A subtle pang of loneliness reminded him that he was still young, still capable of forging new relationships. But real trust, might take time to rebuild. He gazed at the family photos that remained, one of baby Darius in his arms, Freya smiling. A mixture of sorrow and resolve settled in. The past was carved in stone, but the future was malleable. He closed his eyes, letting relief wash over him. We survived. We won. Chapter 9. Months slid by in a surprisingly normal rhythm. Fall leaves drifted across the yard, and Darius started middle school with cautious excitement. The specter of Freya's betrayal gradually faded, though occasional nightmares still visited him. Mitchell, ever vigilant, reassured his son each time. He also found a new job that offered flexible hours and operations manager at a security firm that respected his background. It felt good to channel his protective instincts into a legitimate career. The pay was solid, and the environment supportive. Friends like Noah, Ingrid, Calvin, and Selena remained frequent presences, forging a small but tight-knit circle. They often teased Mitchell about stepping out socially, maybe going on a date. He brushed it off with a grin. One day, perhaps. Then, in an unexpected twist, a letter arrived from prison marked with Edgar's name. Mitchell almost threw it away unread, but curiosity and a sense of final closure compelled him to open it. Inside, scrawled in shaky handwriting, Edgar wrote, "Mitchell, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I realize now what I did was sick. Freya and I fed off each other's greed and cruelty. I see that in therapy. I'm sorry about Darius. I know an apology changes nothing, but it's all I have. You were stronger than me always. If you want to tear up this letter, go ahead. Just thought you should know I'm done fighting. Maybe someday I can do one decent thing, if that matters." Mitchell stared at the page, emotions roiling. Edgar's words sounded contrite, but trust was impossible. At best, it might be a spark of remorse. Mitchell folded the letter, locked it away. He told no one, not even Darius. The boy didn't need that confusion. Around the same time, Mitchell started noticing subtle changes in Darius's demeanor. The boy was sleeping better, rarely jolting awake with nightmares. He joined a local basketball league, returning home sweaty but triumphant, chatting about new friends. The transformation was heartening. One crisp Saturday morning, father and son embarked on a fishing trip, just the two of them. They drove out to a tranquil lake an hour away. The water shimmered under the rising sun, a mirror reflecting bright autumn foliage. Darius cast his line eagerly, while Mitchell settled beside him. They talked about trivial things, video games, favorite snacks, then drifted into companionable silence. After a while, Darius glanced at his dad. "Dad," he murmured, "I think I'm okay. I mean, with everything." It still hurts sometimes, but I don't feel scared every day. That's because you never gave up on me. A lump formed in Mitchell's throat. I promised I'd protect you, didn't I? Darius nodded, looking older and wiser than his years. You did. When they returned home that evening, Ingrid and Selena were waiting in the freshly landscaped backyard, grilling burgers. They'd planned a small surprise gathering to celebrate Darius's start of the new basketball season. Calvin arrived soon after, hauling a cooler of soda. Noah joined in via video call from his current job site, raising a can in toast. Laughter filled the yard. Darius excitedly recounted their fishing trip, brandishing photos of the fish he caught. Ingrid teased Mitchell about looking more relaxed these days. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in pastel hues. At one point, Darius stepped away, rummaging in the house. When he emerged, he handed Mitchell a small wrapped box. I made this in art class, the boy explained shyly. It's nothing huge, but... Mitchell unwrapped it to find a small hand-painted wooden plaque that read, World's Strongest Dad. A baseball and basketball design framed the lettering. Emotion welled in Mitchell's chest. Thank you, son, he said softly. This means more than you know. In the days that followed, Mitchell found himself reflecting on the word strongest. He'd certainly had to be strong enough to confront Freya's betrayal, Edgar's violence, Alonzo's threats. But real strength, he realized, came from patience, strategy, and an unwavering sense of duty to someone he loved more than himself, Darius. He also recognized that vulnerability coexisted with that strength. Accepting help from Ingrid, Selena, Calvin, and others wasn't a sign of weakness, but a testament to trust something he once feared he'd lost entirely. To honor that sense of community, Mitchell decided to volunteer with a local youth center. He and Darius spent a weekend painting murals and installing shelves. The kids there reminded Mitchell of how easily a child's safety can be compromised by adult misdeeds. He felt a calling to be part of the solution. Meanwhile, Freya's prison letters trickled in sporadically. Each time, Mitchell scanned them briefly. She alternated between blaming him for her downfall and expressing regret. He never replied. The protective order was in place, so she couldn't contact Darius directly. Over time, the letters dwindled, as though she realized her pleas fell on deaf ears. Once or twice, a pang of pity crossed Mitchell's mind. Freya had chosen her path, but it led to a grim cell. Perhaps in another life, she might have found redemption. But Mitchell refused to let guilt weigh him down. Darius's well-being took priority, and so did Mitchell's own hard-won peace. One day, as life settled into a gentle rhythm, Selena introduced Mitchell to a friend of hers, Ava, a soft-spoken yet confident woman who worked in family counseling. They met casually over coffee at a local cafe. Darius was at school, so Mitchell went alone, unsure of what to expect. He found Ava easy to talk to. She had a warm smile, asked about his experiences without prying, and shared her own stories of growing up in a tough neighborhood. They laughed about small things, discovered a mutual appreciation for local hiking trails. By the end of that coffee date, Mitchell felt a subtle spark, something he hadn't experienced in a long time. The possibility of companionship untainted by betrayal. He told himself to tread carefully. He'd built walls for good reasons. But maybe, just maybe, he could lower them a bit. Darius's next birthday arrived a milestone that felt more significant than usual. The house brimmed with laughter. Ingrid and Selena brought balloons, Calvin manned the grill, Noah flew in as a surprise guest, and Ava popped by with a modest gift. The atmosphere buzzed with genuine warmth. Darius, beaming ear to ear, tore through presents. Mitchell watched him from across the room, heart brimming with gratitude. He recalled the terror of the hospital visits, the fear of losing his son to Freya's manipulations. Now, all that felt distant, like a nightmare that had finally faded in the morning light. Towards the end of the night, Darius gave a small speech. "Thanks for coming, everyone. This year's been hard, but Dad never stopped fighting for me. I'm glad we can be happy again." He blushed, sinking back into his seat as applause broke out. Mitchell rubbed away a tear he pretended didn't exist. He glimpsed Ava's gentle smile from the sidelines and nodded in acknowledgement. Yes, he thought, we can be happy again. As the party wound down, Mitchell and Darius found a quiet moment on the porch. The horizon tinted purple and orange by the setting sun. The conversation meandered from silly jokes to serious reflections. Darius fiddled with a new watch Calvin gifted him. "Dad, are you really okay now? You look less worried?" Mitchell considered. "I still have concerns, but I'm not weighed down by fear or anger anymore. I can think about tomorrow without my chest tightening." Darius smiled, leaning into his father. "Me too." The sunset glowed brighter, painting the yard in soft lavender shadows. They stayed that way for a while, father and son, bound by a trial of fire but emerging stronger. Eventually, Mitchell spoke quietly. "Time to move forward, buddy. We've earned it."